Hey there and welcome back. This is the 5th war of the season, and if you saw my recent Alliance Quest Map 8 video where I talk about my first day, I did allude a little bit to this Saturday being really hectic for us, trying to plan this war, get Map 8 launched, and just it being a normal Saturday very close to Thanksgiving was not a very fun time to be an officer and a player in a high-tier alliance. However, this war ended up being pretty fun. I got to bring an awesome team of Warlock, Elsa, and Sp2099, and eventually took a mini-boss with Sp2099. I'll get into the details a little later, but we're starting on path 4. They put this iBom here, and I didn't boost very big. I just thought, I felt pretty confident going into this one, and I did think that he would be running willpower, but as we can see right off of the bat, he is not healing at all, which means that willpower mastery is not working. So I'm in for a long fight. I dueled this a lot, and the Special 1 evade was a little bit sketchy when I was close to him, so you'll be seeing me doing a lot of block damage. From the node, he gets the Fury. The active Fury is when I debuff him. It's a non-stacking Fury. And then when there are more than 3 debuffs on me, which there will be pretty much the entire fight, I'm going to be giving him the passive Fury as well. So this is just a really stacked iBom in terms of the amount of damage he can do. So obviously if I take any hits, or if I block a special 2, that's going to be how I die pretty much. I'm okay blocking a few hits on the special 1, parrying and things like that. As long as I can keep his power under control and keep my spacing good, I'm feeling pretty good about this fight. The armor on Warlock is helping these blocked hits and everything, but I do have to give them a little bit of credit here for placing him without willpower, because this is not a normal placement for Abomination. And if he was in one of the more deadly spots where like you really do need to control his power, like if he had some kind of increased power gain or combat rate, I would expect them to place it without willpower. But it's not exactly like Warlock is the best counter to this node. He just happened to fit on my team, and he was sort of the best poison immune that we had available to send this way. So yeah, again, real kudos, because maybe they were thinking ahead and thinking, this could be a trap for Warlock by placing without willpower. So I am pretty impressed with that. At this point, I'm eating a lot of block damage, and I'm okay with it. I would much rather come out of this fight safely and just use some potions. I've got plenty of potions because it's been a pretty clean start to the season, and he's finally getting pretty low. The name of the game is just, I'm using these heavies because I do have the fatigue debuffs on me, which means my crits are hardly ever going to land. So I'm trying to do some damage in other ways, and that's why I was doing those heavies. It also pushes him back a little bit, and it encourages him to throw his special 1. So yeah, that was a pretty ugly looking fight, but overall the strategy was correct, and it felt safe the entire time. And no problem with that fight at all. Warlock will make an appearance a little later. Now, next up, we have Terrax on this node, and I've talked about this fight before. This is not a common placement, but definitely, they put it here because I think they're thinking like, oh no, it's Terrax. Like, we need to find a Terrax counter, and they want people to send like Claire or Diablo or something, and then stack lots of weaknesses on them and make it like a really long fight. And then because it also has insult to injury, you could have your parries fail, and then if you get hit, you're in trouble because there's going to be Furies on him. But this is a great example of Elsa not necessarily being a Terrax counter, but being a counter to this node, the steady build-up Fury. She's purifying every debuff that comes her way. He hasn't even really had the rock field up at all. We're gaining Furies as we purify, and her damage is high enough as it is, and he's a large champ so that she gets all the benefits from her Sig ability there. But for a 30-second takedown of Terrax, like, I would definitely take Elsa there over any kind of like Mystic champion for sure. Felt really good about that, and further proof that like for path 4A, path 4B, if Elsa works for me, I'm going to use her. So even though on paper it wasn't the greatest matchup, it ended up being wonderful. Next up, we have this Clairvoyance. I'm just checking that my Indestructible is still working, and it is. As I mentioned, I'm kind of lightly boosted. I didn't want to burn through one of my big boosts because these were all fights that I was pretty comfortable with. But the Indestructible is there just in case she goes unblockable, which she definitely does in this one. The last time I fought her here, I tried to push her to a special 2 right away because that's a less problematic special. But there, even though I was doing everything I could, she ended up throwing it. So I'm just going to have to be careful because she's going to be unblockable for a pretty long time. But because it's Elsa, we're seeing that I do have the degen on her because I have a couple small bleeds on myself. Right there, I just didn't get out of the way fast enough, so I burnt through the Indestructible. Not the end of the world. We're both unblockable. I could try to find openings, but I'm just waiting for my counter evade to come back, and it does. Throw a special 1 here, and that's pretty much going to nuke her down. So, you know, for Elsa to do those very difficult fights and end up basically full yellow barring it, I would say, once again, she was the right call on my team. I'm not forcing her on the team. I really do think she is the best counter for those fights. So now we're moving on to section 2. Or day 2, I should say. And we had a very interesting end to this war because a lot of our guys were really busy and we were trying to coordinate the last few fights with some time zones and family obligations and travel. And the question was related to my mini boss that I'm taking after this Havok, if I would have a read pre-fight or not. And eventually we were kind of just like, you know what, screw it, we're just going in. So this is Warlock versus Havok on the same unblockable node. If he starts putting the plasma debuffs on me, then he's going to go unblockable. I also have to watch out for crumbling armor because I don't want to ever lose my armor. So the game is shortening our combos if we can, if he's over a bar of power, and just baiting out these heavies. The heavies will reduce his the plasmas on himself, which means that we won't get the debuffs on ourselves. Want to be pushing him to special 2 because that does the same thing. Of course, he throws a 5-hit combo into us, again, baiting the heavy. So this match is going pretty well. Trying to bait out a special 2 now because that's going to also reset his plasmas. That goes well. Now I take a little bit of a risk here and throw this, and there were a decent amount of crits on that, and because of that it put some plasma debuffs on me, and all of a sudden he's unblockable, and he's going to be unblockable for the rest of the fight. So again, I burned through that invulnerable. Very glad that I put it on. But he's getting pretty low, so I'm not feeling too bad about it. He does have 2 bars of power, so I don't really have to worry. This is really easy to bait. And, you know, I think I'm able to just kind of finish this thing off with a special 2, and it wasn't too dangerous. I think I did have a plasma explosion on me. I kind of missed it as I was playing, but the crumbling armor definitely came into play. So that wasn't the cleanest fight I ever had, for sure. But, you know, Warlock is a really good counter there, and if you're comfortable playing Havok unblockable toward the end like I did, even if you do mess up and push him there, it works out. I wish I had just gone to the special 3. That would have been a much better play, but live and learn. And then this is my first time using Sp2099 against one of these power gain mini bosses, and I'll kind of narrate the fight as it goes. But again, we were wondering if we needed to do a read petrify on this because that would start us off with like 35% passive power gain reduction. But I'm going in just with Sp2099. She is high ground. I'm starting off with heavies because each of these exhaustions is going to reduce her passive power gain, ability power gain by 15%. When we dash back and bait those specials, it's going to create the refreshing of all the debuffs, or I should rather say pausing. So now she has a special 2. I do have an invuln, so I'm not scared of pushing her to a special 3, but she's really cooperative there, especially with all the knockdowns. And now we are right where we want to be. If you notice, I dex before doing the special 2, which means that the wither is going to just last longer. Right there, my dash back didn't work the way I wanted it, so I ended up just eating those hits. The high ground is hurting pretty bad, I gotta say, but we kind of have her right where we want her. I'm dexing after these combos because anytime we want to do that, we want to be keeping these wither debuffs on her, and that pauses it when you dash back. So I'm really close to another 2 bars of power. We're going to try to bait this special. She comes right into it, And at this point, we're going to do the same thing, dash back or step back right into that special 2. We don't get a lot of power back from the power back boost, and that's fine. But every time we dash back, again, it's going to help us refresh and keep these debuffs. I throw a special 1 because that gives us a longer pause timer. If you notice how much longer that spider icon is, every time we take a parry, it really hurts though because of that high ground. So yeah, it's a tough fight. You really need to understand Spider-Man 2099's abilities, but he does really counter it, and I think it just has an additional safety net versus someone like Magic. Because Magic is great, but you have to expect it to be a long fight, and if one of her power locks fails, which can happen like 3% of the time, then you could get in a lot of trouble. But anyway, I did feel pretty good about that, and by me taking it without the read pre-fight, it kind of opened up some other stuff so that we were able to finish the map cleanly. We did end up winning this war. It was pretty close, but it was also one of our best performances as an alliance for the whole season. Our battle group had 2 deaths, so we got a really solid 163. So even despite that insanity of the Saturday where we had map 8 and a war to plan and just lots of family plans and busy stuff, we did have one of our best performances of the season. I got to take a mini boss with Spider-Man 2099, and overall we left that day feeling pretty good that maybe it was all worth it. Maybe it was all worth doing all that planning and grind to get where we are. But yeah, the war season is pretty much halfway over now. Just one more war before we get our next break, and we are in the Masters bracket temporarily. Hopefully we can make that stick with a couple more victories, but pretty proud of our group going 3-2 so far, and looking forward to the rest of the season. So thanks for checking this one out, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.